news that just came in the last few minutes. A federal judge tonight has just ruled on former President Donald Trump's attempt to try to keep documents from his time in the White House out of the hands of the investigation in Congress into the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Last month, Trump filed a lawsuit against the January 6th investigation, as well as the National Archives, which holds on to all presidential documents. The lawsuit aimed to prevent the National Archives from handing over Trump White House documents and records to the investigation. The suit argued that those documents were protected by executive privilege and they must be shielded from the investigators. Well, in reality, the person who actually gets to assert that something is protected by executive privilege is not a former president, but the current president. And President Biden's White House counsel's office reviewed the documents in question and said, actually, no, these are not privileged documents at all. These can be given to the investigation. Well, now, just within the past few minutes, this federal judge has issued her ruling on that lawsuit, and she has summarily rejected Donald Trump's attempt to shield these documents from the January 6th investigation in Congress. The judge writes in tonight's ruling, quote, "The plaintiff does not acknowledge the deference owed to the incumbent president's judgment," meaning President Biden, who waived executive privilege on these documents. Quote, "His position that he may override the express will of the executive branch appears to be premised on the notion that his executive power exists in perpetuity. But presidents are not kings, and plaintiff is not president." The judge also writes in this ruling tonight that it is well within the public's interest that Congress gets to review these documents. Quote, "The court holds that the public interest lies in permitting the combined will of the legislative and executive branches to study the events that led to and occurred on January 6th and to consider legislation to prevent such events from ever occurring again." So again, this ruling says, in effect, that Trump's assertion of privilege is bogus, and that there is a strong and legitimate public interest in these documents being given to the investigation, and so they shall go. Now, the documents requested by the investigation include, like, White House call logs and draft documents prepared for Trump, handwritten notes from his chief of staff. Also included in this documents request, which I find very intriguing, was supposedly an executive order that was drafted about election integrity. Trump was going to try to issue some sort of executive order about the election. What was that? As was expected, Trump has filed a notice that he intends to appeal this ruling to the D.C. Appeals Court, D.C. U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. But barring any movement on that, with this ruling from this judge tonight, all those documents, all the documents that the investigation is seeking are now expected to be turned over to the January 6th investigation by the end of this week, by Friday.